Aloha and welcome to Figments, the Power of Imagination. I'm Dan Leaf. I go by Fig. I'm a former Air Force fighter pilot, blah, 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 who likes to talk about flying and other issues, other things that might inspire and entertain you. And that's what we're going to do today. And we got a good one today. You're going to like it, I guarantee. And if we don't ask for your money back, wait, this is all free and nonprofit, so that won't help. Before I do that, I want to go on a bit of a rant, and this won't surprise my viewers. This rant is about what? North Korea, because I'm obsessed with the North Korea problem. I did an episode a few weeks ago on my vision for North Korea based on a paper in the from the Institute for Public Policy, and it was written by 6 very distinguished guys who I respect. Don't respect the paper. It's more of the same. It's baloney. And then I had to listen to them on a podcast on the impossible state. Again, people I respect. It's baloney. One thing, they were lamenting 30 years of failure. Hey, give yourselves credit. It's 70 years of failure. The armistice was signed in 1953 when I was just over 11 months old, and everything about me starts with an elderly Honolulu man. We got to fix this problem. So the vision is end the war, replace the armistice, improve the human condition in North Korea, and denuclearize. Everything else is policy and strategy, and there are all kinds of ways for those to break down, but you can't get anywhere without a vision. Okay, I feel better now, and I'm ready to talk this episode with Greg Blower Sembower about owning a Mustang. Hey, welcome, Blower. How are you, man?
Good. How you doing, Fig?
Good. Good to see you. We're old friends from never. Yeah. I mean, we met through the old fighter pilots group, a group of people who are distinguished by being old fighter pilots. And you flew my friend Greg Slick-Aguirre, my great friend, Huey, combat pilot in Vietnam, then F-15 Eagle driver extraordinaire. And I thank you for that. Well, welcome.
Thanks. It was good to fly slick.
Yeah, I bet he's one of the best guys ever. So you own a Mustang, big deal. I've got a Mustang. In fact, there it is right there. By the way, that's for sale because I own a couple of Mustangs. Okay, you might say, well, they don't fly, but that's not what the officer said. So maybe they do. Seriously, you've done something that I can only dream of. And we'll talk about that and how you came to do it. There's much more to your story as we got to know each other through the meta whatever world, and there is goodness to that when you use it wisely. But Greg, you're a Michigander originally, and I'm a Wisconsinite, and we still can speak, right?
That's correct.
And I've got a picture, kind of a start to now picture of you as a young engineering student at the University of Michigan. I'm appalled that you're typing with one finger.
I know.
How do you explain that?
Last period of my last paper in college.
Last period of your last paper. Majored in aeronautical engineering?
Aerospace engineering at Michigan.
Aerospace engineering. Why aerospace engineering? What drew you to that?
I always wanted to be an astronaut, and I seemed like Michigan and MIT were kind of the top 2 schools for aerospace engineering as far as I knew. So, and Michigan being just Ann Arbor, just 2 hours south of where I lived, seemed like the place to go. And they offered me a scholarship, and I was always a Wolverine fan at heart anyway.
Hard for a Badger to hear. So your boys, we got a picture of your 2 boys there. Did either of them, did they turn out academically inclined in engineering, or different like kids often do?
Well, the one's doing physics at the University of Colorado, and one's doing computer science. So they both kind of stuck with the STEM programs, which I was happy to see.
Yeah, I do physics every day. I mean, it's kind of life, right? But I don't know physics and never took a physics class. Was being a pilot part of the aeronautical aerospace engineering track? Did you have that in mind too, or was it more the academic pursuit that you were interested in?
I was mostly interested in the academics, but I kind of pursued a private pilot's license on the side while I was going to college. So I knew I needed to get a private license to kind of pursue my goal of being an astronaut at some point, which never did happen.
What was there a single event, or was it a process of building the astronaut dream? Was it like Men on the Moon, or what happened?
I think it was just always an interest of mine. I would always go to the library and check out books on space travel and science fiction, and it's always a passion.
You did some engineering later on. So I call it freelance engineering, but most of what you did was fly, because you wound up joining the Air Force, becoming a fighter pilot, and then eventually transitioning to the airlines. Got kind of another beginning to then photo of you here with your Viper as a young lieutenant. I love that picture because we've all got that picture. Every fighter pilot ever has that picture. And then with a much bigger airplane. So you must have had a plan and gone off and just been in ROTC or something, or
actually, I didn't really know anything about ROTC. I was getting close to graduating my senior year, and all my friends were interviewing with Boeing and Bell and all the aerospace companies, and I basically just walked down to the local recruiter and told the Air Force and the Navy that I wanted to fly fighter planes, and they just said fill out the AFOQT, the test, and I got a pilot slot pretty much right away. So
the AFOQT, folks, is the Air Force Officer Qualifying Test. And if you go back to the first Figments episode, and I recommend that, please click like, you'll find that it played a significant role in me becoming a pilot, because it's a part SAT, part would you rather go to the ballet or eat an ice cream cone psychological test. And it has a very good track record since World War II of predicting success in initial pilot training. So he was an engineering student and a good student. I was not, but the test is a good predictor, and off you went to fly fighters. Blower, I was very impressed. You had 5 operational tours in 2 fighters. What the heck? Did you bribe the personnel officer? What's the dealio?
I just kept getting lucky. I did a 2-year bachelor tour in Torrejon,
Spain, folks. Not a bad deal.
Then I got 2.5 years in Homestead, Florida, flying the F-16, and then
not a bad deal.
Then the wing was desperate to send somebody to Thailand to fly with the Royal Thai Air Force with their F-16 program. So,
that's 3 not a bad deals.
And then just before going there, they had offered me opportunity to go up to Tonopah, Nevada, to fly the F-117, the stink bug, and I said I can't because I have orders to Thailand, but call me in a year.
Well, they never do that. I mean, I know how the Air Force is. If you snooze, you lose. You miss your opportunity. Have a nice day, buddy. We'll find somebody else. So, did they call you back?
They did. I was pretty happy to hear from them, and chance to spend a couple months in Tonopah.
Wound up flying the F-117 shown here in Saudi Arabia in 1991. That's the year of Desert Storm. Did you participate in Desert Storm? And I'm going to pick a scab that both you and I have. So go ahead and tell your sad story, and I'll tell mine.
My classmates and I, there were 3 of us. We had our first flights right around January 15th of 1991 up at Tonopah.
That would be the start of the Desert Storm Air War, folks.
So we were drinking beer in the officers' club up there pretty much for the whole war, flying about 2 times a week.
And I am a pacifist in the 3rd iteration of the definition. I prefer peace to war. There's a war that has to happen. I'm all about fighting it, and even at my elderly state would do so, but it should be the very last choice. But if you miss one, it sucks as a fighter pilot. You're trained to do that. It sucks. And we both missed one, but it worked out okay for you, as I'll describe, because you had a great airline career. Do you know many people who flew the 747, the 777, and the 787, all 3 of those airplanes? I don't.
Probably a handful of at United. I don't know of anybody else that only flew wide body international, but There's probably a couple at United I can probably think of that have only
Yeah,
flown
it's
my buddies.
the 747s where you started. We talked about this in our prep call. Airplanes with toilets generally are not beautiful to me. That's a beautiful airplane.
I liked it.
Which of the three was your favorite to fly?
The 787, I love the flying qualities, but the 747's got a place in my heart because I flew it for so long, and I flew it in and out of about 60 airports worldwide.
Wow. Holy moly. Yeah, I've been to 72 countries, and there are a couple others that I bombed that I didn't visit, but wow, 60 airports. Ooh. Well, that had to be a great career. It had to come to an end. And what was your criteria for end of airline career? I know the answer to this, but it's important to what's going to follow here about the Mustang.
Well, I was like most people, I was planning on sticking out my career until retirement age, which is now 65. But I got to the point when I was 60, about 2 years ago, that I didn't really need to work for the airline anymore, and I kind of set I wouldn't call it a goal, but a state where if my retirement life could be better than my work life, I would quit and move on to a retired life.
And in just a minute, we're going to find out what would make that true. But first, let me talk about the next episode, which will air March 15th. It's going to be about the next episode of Figments, The Power of Imagination, about, well, I'm not sure yet because I need to reach out to guests, but it'll be great. I ask you to tune in. And I also ask you to support Figments, The Power of Imagination through ThinkTech, our great nonprofit platform. By the way, today I'm wearing my Restaurant 604 shirt. I think I'm looking awesome. Restaurant 604, I can't endorse them, but they did have a golf tournament last Veterans Day that benefited an organization that I support, the Armed Services YMCA Hawaii, which does wonderful things for our military and their families here in Hawaii. And I'm the chairman of the board, but they have a great team that does wonderful things for our folks who serve. So there we are. Your retirement is looming. And in the Air Force, we have Finny flights, Blower, and they're awesome. You pick a special mission, flying with folks you like. Slick, I flew with Slick, by the way, on his Finny flight, and we beat a couple of Viper guys like we were clubbing baby seals. And that's the truth. We have the film to prove it. So did you have a special airline Finny flight planned?
It wasn't really particularly special. It was during the COVID timeframe, and we were flying a lot of flights in and out of China. So my Finny flight was into Tokyo, and then a follow-on flight the next day to Chengdu, China. And that's a picture of me there.
Yeah, there you are, and beautiful. Hey, wait a minute. That looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and I'm not talking about your girth. I'm talking about nice outfit. What are you wearing there?
Wearing but the bunny suit. They forced us in China to wear these hazmat bunny suits just to walk around the airplane on the tarmac, and so I've got my my bunny suit is all signed by the crew. So there were just 4 of us.
So does your bunny suit hang inside in your I Love Me part of your closet, which I think most fighter pilots have with their old Zoom bags? Is it next to your desert flight suit?
Not quite. It's in the back of the closet.
Okay. That had to be quite an experience. And was there some melancholy about leaving that world like we all had, leaving fighter assignments and flying our last fighter flights?
It was a big leap to just walk into the chief pilot's office and say, I think I'm done. Yeah. I'm going to quit in 2 weeks.
In a little early, like you said, not when you had to. Most, I think a significant majority time out and can't fly anymore because it's a good job. It's with good qualified people and you make money. So you did that because you planned well financially. And this Blower, I don't know you yet. We haven't had a cigar and a glass of adult beverage together yet. I hope that'll happen. But you strike me as two people, not bipolar. I'm not saying that, okay. But kind of this aerospace engineer with plans to the nth detail, slide rule out, got all this, figured it all out. And another guy just goes, let's go for it. Is that a fair characterization?
That's fair. When I retired, I knew I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I knew it was going to be good stuff. So I said, I'm going to buy an airplane. It's going to be a good one. And I kind of took what I call a ready, fire, aim mentality. I'm going to buy something, and then I'm going to figure out how to make it work for me.
And why did you choose the P-51 Mustang? As I told you, I've flown in the back seat of them about 10 hours, 12 hours, something like that. It's a fabulous airplane, but you had options. What made the Mustang the airplane you wanted to own?
Being single seat and single engine, it reminded me of the F-16, both beautiful, kind of the F-16 of its day. So I really wanted to get a feel for what it was like to be back in the 40s flying the predecessor, I would call it, to the F-16. And I also wanted one with something with a back seat so I could share the experience.
Yeah, so the basic combat model is single seat, but many of the warbirds you see flying at air shows have an extra seat either added or were technically TF-51s in the U.S. Air Force, the nascent U.S. Air Force.
Right.
Is yours, which is yours? Was it built as a straight D model or
straight D model? And it's got the back seat with full controls. Basically, it's got a stick and throttle and rudder pedals and a cluster of 5 instruments.
I've tortured the audience long enough, so let's take a quick look at the airplane and your other ride, which is not a Mustang.
Sorry.
Hey, my mantra is make sure it doesn't suck to be me. It looks like you've succeeded.
I've been having fun.
And you planned for it. You invested well, but then you bought it. I have to ask 30 seconds on the Ferrari. What is it? What year? What's the dealio?
It's a 2019 812 Superfast. So V12 engine, straight. It's naturally aspirated and goes pretty quick.
I bet it does. Maybe not quite as quick as the Mustang. So you decide you're going to buy a Mustang. What's the first step to that? Is it finding the airplane or learning how to fly an airplane that lands butt first, if you will, a tail dragger?
The first step for me was actually just to buy the airplane, part of my ready, fire, aim.
Really? Oh.
Went and shopped on Platinum Fighters online, and I think Trade a Plane is where I found the one I ended up buying, and just.
Why was it being sold? Because how can you get tired of owning a Mustang? And I know Ed Shipley, who I haven't talked to for years, what a great guy he is. He used to fly in the back of Big Beautiful Doll with him, but he sold his Mustang to buy an F-86. Okay, that's fair. But why was the owner selling it? Scare themselves?
I think he lost his medical, and he had 2 Mustangs. So he's kind of clearing out his hangar. I think he had about 10 airplanes of various types, T6, and some others, and he's getting up in age, and I think was realizing it was time to move on.
Tread lightly, though. I've been an avid Harley rider for years, and you got to know your limitations. So in December, I sold my last Harley. Hey, I want to live long enough to be a problem for society and my family. That's my goal. So you found the Mustang. I know it was expensive. We won't talk about how expensive, but you had planned for that and prepared for it so you could do it. I wouldn't say comfortably because that's a chunk of change, but you could do it affordably.
Right.
At the same time, you already had scoped out where you were going to put it. And...
Hadn't done anything. I bought it in November of 2021, and I didn't know what airport I was going to keep it at. I didn't know how am I going to get it out of whatever hangar. Do I need to have a tug, a tow bar? How's all that work? I knew nothing. I knew I owned a Mustang.
Dude. So was the previous owner kind enough to hang on to it till you sorted out all that stuff?
He was very good about it. He was kind of getting antsy towards the end. It's like, when are you coming to get this thing?
All right. So now you have a tail dragging World War II fighter. Had you ever flown any tail draggers?
I had 0 tail dragger time until last year.
Yeah. So you went to school for that, right?
I got 1 hour in a Stearman and about 10 hours in a super decathlon getting instruction, and then off to South Carolina to learned to fly the T6 for about 8 hours.
I've got a little bit of tail dragger passenger / co-pilot time. What's most different about landing a tail dragger, an airplane that has not tricycle gear, but lands butt first, as I said, with the tail wheel? What's the one thing?
One thing is it always wants to be facing the other way. It never wants it. You got to keep your happy feet moving on the rudder pedals, or it wants to flip around and go where it came from.
Really? Oh, wow.
It's a challenge for me. It's a new concept for me, so it's been interesting.
Yeah, and especially because you were a Viper baby, flew the 117 or the F-16 first, which is not very feet. You don't have to use your feet much, like at all, unless you're really max performing the airplane. And I don't know about the 117, but now your feet are part of the process. And I suspect you're not jamming the pedals to full deflection on any of the Boeing airplanes you flew.
No, never. Unless you lose an engine.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I mean, that you have this muscle memory. It reminds me of going from flying F4, F-15, F-15 at the time, and then getting a checkout in the Huey and flying the Huey and the Pavehawk rescue helicopter. Even though I was a foot guy coming from hard wing F4s, had to work the rudders in the hard wing F4. It's a whole different world, and you have to unlearn things. And flying is best when it's instinctive, and you learn the instincts. They aren't in your DNA, but now you got to invent some instincts, and you have to do things consciously. Are you past that? Go ahead.
I got to embarrass myself a few times, not being able to taxi the T6 onto the runway, and I'm just cruising off into the dirt, going sideways.
I get the feeling. Are you to the point where tail dragging is natural? Now, I don't know how many hours of, not yet.
I've got about 100 hours of tail dragger time now, about 65 in the Mustang, and it's the scariest part of the flight every time is putting the tail down for me.
Yeah.
And keeping it near the center line.
So I am intentionally torturing our viewers and not showing too many pictures. You can Google it, folks. But here that beauty is coming up. Oh God, that's a beautiful airplane. That is a beautiful airplane.
That was part of my criteria too. I wanted to pick the prettiest one.
Well, I think you succeeded. That's a P-51D that never left the U.S. A little bit about your love there.
It never left the U.S., but it's dressed up as part of the 325th Fighter Group, which was in, I believe, North Africa, the checker tails. And it's got the numbers 00 on the side for the commander's numbers. Then it's also
nice.
The Luftwaffe symbols for the 3 aerial kills that commander got.
Do you remember the name of the commander? I'm old enough. I know some of these guys. Well, I knew.
Last name was Beverly. Colonel Beverly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back and look at a book or something. So now you've learned how to tail drag in the Stearman and the T6, et cetera. And you've got to go fly the Mustang. Is there a school for new World War II pilots here in 2023?
There is, yeah. Stallion 51. In fact, I'm wearing their Crazy Horse shirt here. The
nice.
51 is what I flew there, Crazy Horse 2. And it's quite the experience for me just to try to keep that airplane on the runway when I'm taking off and landing.
Yeah. Lots of torque on takeoff. You can't see on when you're taxiing. You have to S-turn, right? But when you run that Merlin up, oh man, is there any sound like it in the world, Blower?
I love it.
There isn't, folks. If you haven't been to an air show, go to an air show just to hear a P-51 at full power. It's an amazing thing. Did you start in the back seat at Stallion?
Did one backseat ride, and the syllabus called for 2 backseat rides, and they skipped the second one, I think, because I'd flown enough time in my own Mustang in the backseat that necessary. So I was in.
Did you fly your own airplane, the one you had bought, presumptuously, I guess might be the word, with the previous owner?
No, I had some other guys flying it for me, and so I just flew in their back seats. I think I got about 10 hours in the back, which wasn't a lot of good quality stick time. It was just sitting back there cruising straight and level for the most part. But
Okay, let's talk about flying it, both for pilots and folks who aren't pilots. You're on the runway and you're pushing the throttle up. Give me a narrative of the takeoff roll and the first 500 feet. What's it like?
for me, it's a thought process of I'm pushing the power up fairly slowly to up to 55 inches of manifold pressure while I'm hoping to be able to see whether I'm keeping it on the center line or not. So I'm definitely adding right rudder to keep it not trending to go to the left. So
Right.
that's the biggest
Because of the torque.
all the torque on there, and then getting to about 60 miles an hour and pushing the stick forward. And then it's like the, what do they call it? The right hand rule. The propeller moving down makes the airplane also want to go left.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So if I were to be still adding power while I'm lowering the nose, it's a double negative. So it takes a lot of right rudder. So I try to make it in a two-step process. I'm adding power, and then later on, about 60 miles an hour, I'm lowering the nose to keep it, put it in a takeoff attitude.
And takeoff speed generally?
About 110 miles per hour. And my airplane's in miles per hour, as some of them are in knots, nautical miles per hour. Mine's not. So
Does it fly off the runway, or do you give it a little bump on the stick? How's it coming?
I'll pull the stick back a little bit to get it airborne, and then keep it at takeoff power for about another 15 seconds or so.
Gear up.
Until I can land it, glide it back. Need to.
And so gear up, flaps up right away. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've flown.
Take off with the flaps up.
Ah,
So there is no flaps to worry about on takeoff.
good.
Biggest issue
Simplifies
is
everything.
over speeding the gear.
Really, what's the gear speed limit?
165 miles per hour.
So as you can tell, I never, Ed and Jimmy and Vlado never let me take their airplanes off from the back seat. I don't blame them. But what I remember from flying, especially the first flight with Ed Shipley out of Shaw, rejoining on one of my F-16s as wing commander, which didn't suck, part of the didn't suck criteria, was as soon as you do start flying, and he probably gave me the airplane at 500 feet, something safe. It's indescribably smooth through the air.
It is.
I've never flown even the Viper, an airplane like it, that is so at home when it's airborne.
And it really likes to go fast downhill. I'll tell you that.
All for that. Let's digress for a second. Which block Viper did you fly?
Mostly block 15s. So for block 10, training at
A models.
A models. Yeah.
So I flew the block 50 at Shaw, which speaking of wanting to go fast, your biggest fear was overspeeding something. So okay, we got just 0 seconds left, but I'll go ahead and go over a little bit. I could go on forever. And like I said, Blower, I look forward to having a chance to do this in person and talk further about something we both love flying. That first flight, you're checked out, you're qualified in the Mustang, you're ready to go in this airplane you've spent a lot of money on, and it's your first solo. How did that feel?
It was a little intimidating. I'd reviewed all the checklists multiple times. I had my mentor, Mike Flager, kind of standing by near the airplane. He's got hundreds of.
Did you do that there in Phoenix, or?
He's right out in the Phoenix area, and it went really well. And it was kind of intimidating though, not having an instructor in the back. But a very
and you own it. I mean, you and I both had initial solos in airplanes the government owned. Who cares, right? They're just taxpayers. I'm kidding, folks. We care about your tax dollars, but it's different. It's your life and your investment.
And a dream come true for me to be able to do that and kind of do it with minimal hours. They'd recommended I get at least 200 hours in the T6 before going to training, and I only got.
Oh, really?
Got 13 hours total in the T6. So I was like,
ooh,
still a new taildragger pilot at this point.
Gutsy move, Maverick, as they say. How often do you get to fly it?
I'm trying to do it. It goes in spurts. I'll fly 3 times in 1 week, and other weeks, like right now, the runway is closed down at Falcon Field that I need
Mhm.
for, and so I'm not flying this week at all till Saturday. So I'll fly about one. My goal is to get 100 hours a year in it.
I didn't get to mention that you've done a lot of different things. You're still interested in space flight. You did some freelance engineering while you're with the airlines, and you've got all that going for you, which makes me come to my closing question for you, Blower. Having fulfilled this dream, made this Figment reality in an incredible process, an investment, frankly. What's your next Figment? What's the next thing you want to do?
Next thing has already been in the works for 3 years, and got a little model here to kind of show what we're talking about.
Some space stuff.
I signed up to go into space with Virgin Galactic in their space program, so they call us future astronauts. But so that's about
so that dream will come true. You never lose it. Never, never give up. What's the timeline for that? Do you have one?
They're going to start flying regular passengers, I think, in a few months here. And then they're also building a series of new spaceships, actually here in the Phoenix area. And those will be ready in a couple of years. So for me, it'll be number 602 on the list. So it'll be probably years before I go. Like, I'm in no hurry. It's kind of just fun being part of the community.
Yeah.
And the other people that are going up with me.
Well, good for you, good for dreaming, good for having a Figment and making it reality. So we get to that point that goes back to my second episode where Fingers Goldfein, former chief staff, said he'd ask himself, what would Fig do? I think sometimes he went the opposite direction, but what would Fig do? Have a plan to a point and then just go for it. And Blower, that's what you've done, and I congratulate you for that. And thanks for being my guest and my virtual friend, and I look forward to cementing that in person. Thanks for appearing. All righty. Well, that's it. I remind you that we have playlists for Figments, The Power of Imagination on YouTube, and a show, an opinion show that I did when I thought I could do a show every week. I was wrong. Too much. Figments on Reality. Please click like when you get there. None of this is monetized. I'm not quite I'll never own a P-51 for a variety of reasons, one of them being money, because I'm not good at that. But please click like, because it makes the old man feel good. And please do support this wonderful nonprofit platform, ThinkTech Hawaii, that makes citizen journalists, that allows citizen journalists like me to bring our friends forward and share their amazing stories. So I'll see you in a couple weeks. Aloha.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.